と最悪のストーリー東京コリー街は almost 40希望の未来遥か彼方の glory
ATARASHII GAKKO is a girl quartet that has taken Japan and the world by storm. They're spunky, brash, and not afraid to act outside of the ordinary. But more than that, they represent a growing population of vocal Japanese youth eager for change. If you're unfamiliar with ATARASHII GAKKO, you may recognize them from this, or this, or this, or maybe even this. Actually, scratch that last one. In all seriousness, ATARASHII GAKKO has received an explosion of attention on social media recently, so if you're online, it would be really surprising if you've never heard of them or their music. At the time of recording this, they have over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify and 70 million streams on their most popular song, Otona Blue. We don't know much about their origins yet, but we do know that the members of ATARASHII GAKKO, Suzuka, Rin, Mizu, and Kanon, met in 2014 as high schoolers and spent the first few years of their career moonlighting as performers while continuing their studies.
Can you explain to me how you guys met? Because the origin stories are really interesting. I've heard rumor that it was in a grocery store aisle, but I think like that's maybe a lie. I don't know.
Destiny!
ATARASHII GAKKO officially debuted in 2015 under the name ATARASHII GAKKO no Leaders, or New School Leaders in English, with the Asobi system. In 2020, they confirmed their global name ATARASHII GAKKO and signed to the American record label 88 Rising, known primarily for hosting and collaborating with popular Asian American artists like Joji, Rich Brian, and Hikaru Utada. The group began to gain international attention through the song Otona Blue, with choreography and suggestive lyrics that blew up on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Many of their American fans truly got to know the group through their appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where they sang Tokyo Calling from their album AG Calling. The performance currently has 2.9 million views on YouTube. Since then, ATARASHII GAKKO has been non-stop. Not only did they perform at Coachella in 2024, but they're currently concluding the Japanese leg of their world tour. But what has drawn such a wide audience to this Japanese girl group that started 10 years ago? Although their music is undeniably catchy, I believe that it's actually their messaging that attracts so many fans to them. In an interview with Internet American personality Zach Sang in between weekends of Coachella 2024, Suzuka said the following about the goal of ATARASHII GAKKO.
目標はやっぱこう、もう言語を超えた新しい学校と世界とのコネクトっていうのを目標にしていつもパフォーマンスを作っています。
But what is the world of ATARASHII GAKKO? First and foremost, ATARASHII GAKKO doesn't seem to hold themselves to traditional boundaries. Despite being labeled as a J-pop group, they often experiment with sounds outside of the genre's conventions.
その J-POP っていうのがさ、その日本語であって、それで世界にはない J-POP っていうジャンルがあるかもしれないけど、なんか私たちは日本語であろうが英語であろうが、なんか別にどっちでもよくて、私たち新しい学校っていうスタイルがこう世界に通じるかどうか。
However, ATARASHII GAKKO isn't aiming to completely dismantle existing structures, but more expand on what it means to live within those boundaries.
なんか J-POP を塗り替えるっていう感覚っていう風には全然作ってなくて、ただただ私たちが Oh my god, so exciting! もうジャストそれ。ジャストそれ。まあこのアルバム AG 降臨。だから AG はいつも世界に降臨していくし、あなたのところにも降臨していくよっていうメッセージが。で、それがその J-POP とか日本の枠を超えたグローバルなスタイルでみんなにこのアルバムは聴いてほしいなって思ってます。
They often emphasize their desire for individuality within the confines of the societal norms that suppress it.
日本の社会はさ、やっぱこの団体行動っていうのが大事になるやん。
そうだね。
それこそ学校でもさ、同じような動きしなあかんとかさ、よくやったやんか。
そうだね。
でそれをなんかこう苦しいと思いすぎないこと、でそしてその団体行動の中でも絶対にその中の自由がある、それをやっぱ見つけ出す、自分らしさを見つけ出すっていうのはもしかしたら難しいかもしれない。
そうだね。
だけどそれのなんかこう少しでも先導者として私たちのこのね活動っていうのがなんかこう刺激になれれば嬉しいなと思うよね。
Even their group name is connected to this purpose, serving as the new school leaders for this upcoming generation.
もともとその結成当時学生だった私たちが学生の半歩先を行くリーダーになろうっていうことで結成された4人だったから新しい学校のリーダーズになったけど、ちょっと半歩だけ先。
一歩とは言わない。
そう。
As new school leaders, ATARASHII GAKKO is creating an atmosphere of self-exploration and change, even if the structures within Japanese society aren't encouraging it. Now, all of this sounds great on paper, but does ATARASHII GAKKO actually carry through on their mission statement? I would argue yes. ATARASHII GAKKO is not an explicitly political group, but they do aim to create a change in Japanese society. As a commercial pop group, they use the conventions of their music to convey the issues of conformity and encourage their listeners to embrace both their individual selves and individuality within the collective. In their branding, music, and music videos, I believe that ATARASHII GAKKO uses 3 key elements to convey their message: parody, homage, and reinvention. ATARASHII GAKKO creates parodies and caricatures of Japanese life to emphasize the contradictions and overall issues with Japanese society. This form of commentary not only allows a broader audience to access issues specific to Japan, but also creates a natural critique through the realities of what's exaggerated. ATARASHII GAKKO also pays homage to the cultures that form the aspects of society they want to maintain. ATARASHII GAKKO doesn't shy away from its Western influences, infusing elements of American hip-hop and jazz in their music. However, ATARASHII GAKKO also firmly roots themselves in traditional and popular Japanese culture, keeping their message connected to the main issues at hand relevant to their home country. Lastly, ATARASHII GAKKO takes tools used for militaristic conformity and reclaims it as a call to action to progress as a society and collectively embrace individuality. All the members of ATARASHII GAKKO are well into their early to mid-20s now, but they still use the school aesthetic as their main form of branding. Their uniforms are a great way to demonstrate what I mean with 2 of my 3 interpretations of their methodology, specifically homage and reinvention. Having a uniform in itself is a form of homage ATARASHII GAKKO pays to their origins as high schoolers and the common memory of wearing uniforms in a Japanese school. Uniforms have been known as a way to de-individualize the body and accustom one to the discipline necessary for service. In the book Fashion and War in Popular Culture, Prudence Black states the following in her chapter, The Discipline of Appearance. As a technology, uniforms shape and code the body, so they become a unit that belongs to a collective whole. Current variations of the Japanese school uniform stems from the Meiji period, but uniform dress has been required of students since the early Edo period. Nearly 95% of Japanese citizens begin wearing a uniform in middle school, with most continuing to wear them into high school. ATARASHII GAKKO has continuously changed the uniforms they wear while performing, but the main elements have remained steadfast throughout the years. ATARASHII GAKKO references the conventions of the Japanese uniform to create their own unique style, using the history and cultural presence of the Japanese schoolgirl as an allegory for expressing one's individuality in a conformist society. Almost all of ATARASHII GAKKO's outfits are serafuku uniforms, which are known as sailor-style uniforms in Japan. This is because the serafuku was directly modeled after the 20th century British Royal Navy uniform. Today, most Japanese schools have opted for a blazer-style uniform, but the serafuku is still prevalent as a symbol of Japanese youth in daily life and media. It's even been adopted internationally, appearing in North American media often to signify young Japanese girls, although often stereotypically. Atarashi Gakko's use of the serafuku is mostly in line with what one would expect to see in a Japanese school, and that's because it's modeled off of their actual uniforms.
最初はなんか本当に等身大の学生だったのでセーラー服を着てたんですけど、最近は学生服もその世界に戦いに行く上での挑戦する服になってきていて、洋服が同じだったとしてもそれぞれ4人の個性がすごく発揮できていると思うし、それがすごく楽しいので。
The use of the serafuku specifically, however, in lieu of the more popular blazer style, evokes a stronger militaristic image, which they subvert in their music and presentation of the uniform itself. Their most recent iteration of this uniform is covered in Japanese graffiti, most of which translates to words associated with their mission, like youth and school leaders. Atarashi Gakko is also very particular about their songs. It's the one aspect of their branding that's changed the most, with over 11 different variations being recorded by the band members themselves. The most well-known version of these songs say Youth Representative of Japan, but other messages include standing out with individuality and freedom, and youth is moving forward even if you are lost. In interviews, Atarashi Gakko often says that their songs are where they truly express their individuality, as the different sayings written on them stand out among the typical constraints of the Japanese uniform.
これだけじゃなくて、
ああ、そうやね。いろんなもうmany word
こう私たちの伝えたい思いだったりとか、個性が出せる場所。
The red armbands that Atarashi Gakko wears are also associated with their school club branding, often used to designate club and organization leaders in Japanese schools. Since all of the girls are youth representatives, they all sport these armbands, collectively guiding their audience. Like the serafuku, red armbands are prevalent in Japanese and Japanese-inspired media. All of these elements combined create the image of Atarashi Gakko as we know them today. And in case the walkthrough of the uniform may still feel a little bit obtuse for the point I'm trying to make, we have evidence directly from the mouths of Atarashi Gakko.
日本の学校は制服っていうのがあって、みんな同じ洋服でちゃんと規則を守って登校しなきゃいけなくて、でもそんな中でも個性を発揮できるよっていうメッセージが込められてきたかな。
You know, I'm just now realizing that I probably could have just put that quote at the beginning of this section and it would have made things a whole lot easier. Oh well. One of Atarashi Gakko's most popular songs is Tokyo Calling. As previously shown, the song gained a lot of attention abroad, being featured on Jimmy Kimmel Live and blowing up on TikTok. From the bombastic instrumental to the energetic, mesmerizing choreography, there are so many elements that drew both a local and international audience to this song. However, Tokyo Calling is also uniquely political, or at least compared to other songs by the band. Tokyo Calling in its music video uses a blend of critical parody, homage, and reinvention to call Japan to action against the dissatisfactory condition of its society. We'll start by going over elements of the song itself, followed by the lyrics, and finally breaking down the stylization of the music video. The instrumentation for Atarashi Gakko's Tokyo Calling is a mixture of Japanese and American influences, blending traditional J-pop with American hip-hop stylizations. The song immediately creates a foreboding atmosphere with the deep, blaring horns and the heavy beat of taiko drums. Taiko drums are traditional Japanese drums, and they're used quite frequently in Atarashi Gakko's music. The drums are then mixed with electronic trap snares as the main chorus begins, making the song feel snappier and more urgent. At the end, the song overlays a quick, snappy snare drumline tune on top of the existing taiko drums, creating a marching tempo for the triumphant call to action in the bridge. This drumline is reminiscent of many North American marching bands, with Atarashi Gakko even featuring the USC marching band and the Taiko Project during their Coachella performance of the song. The lyrical content of Tokyo Calling is equally as rich as its instrumentation, if not more so. Tokyo Calling paints a rather linear story with its lyrics, so it's best to break it down section by section. The beginning of the first verse paints a troubling picture of Japan today, introducing the listener to the current mentality of the national consciousness. There's a lingering feeling of dread among Japanese citizens, with no clear path forward. This is a feeling that has been described in multiple articles as the endless everyday. The endless everyday, or owari naki nichijo, is a term used to describe the paradoxical collective feeling of stasis and impending instability in Japan. This social mindset can be traced back to the 1990s, where a series of natural, economic, and moral crises led to a crisis of faith in Japan's progress as a nation. After World War II, Japan lacked an underlying code to unite the people. Any attempts at nationalism were equated with Imperial Japan and especially discouraged during the period of American occupation. This led to a small identity crisis for Japanese society until the economic boom of the 70s and 80s. During Japan's economic prosperity, the country had become centered around mega corporations rather than the individual needs of citizens, with government supporting these institutions and relying on them to set the country's social order. This phenomenon was known as Japan Inc. Other issues like the 1995 Kobe Hanshin earthquake, the 1995 sudden gas attacks, the 1997 Youth A murders, and a multitude of moral concerns about the youth created an atmosphere of never-ending crisis and simultaneous stagnation in progress as a society, creating the hopeless, static landscape that ATARASHII GAKKO describes in this song. The second half of the verse introduces small vignettes of a nuclear Japanese family, each of their situations critiquing specific aspects of Japanese society. The dad is a victim of overwork culture, which is not only common in Japan, but has led to a series of small health crises among employees. Japan uses a seniority-based work-work system, where good work is rewarded with more challenging work in order to motivate employees to continuously improve. In an article studying the impact of Japanese middle-class culture on Japan's development, a survey in the Kanto and Kyushu areas showed that consistent pressure from work has led employees to prioritize work over other aspects of their life, like their family, household responsibilities, and even their own health. Overworking has led to two major phenomenons in Japan: karashi, which is death from overwork and excessive workplace stress, and karojisatsu, suicide from overwork. The son's life not only addresses rigorous education standards in Japan, but is also a reference to the social phenomenon of hikikomori, or severe social withdrawal. Hikikomori, which also refers to the people who suffer from it, are often stereotyped as young men due to the strong trend of reclusive teens and young adult men in the 90s and early 2000s. It is often said that these young men become overwhelmed with the pressures exerted by the Japanese education system and the career path enforced by Japan Inc., thus leading them to neglect responsibilities altogether and hiding in their homes. Such a strong phenomenon, antithetical to Japan's societal structure, only increased a lack of hope in the future, especially with its impact on the younger generation. The mother's life depicts the consequences of Japan's work culture conflicting with the traditional patriarchal structure of the Japanese nuclear household. As previously mentioned, the economic stasis of the 90s into the 2000s pressured women into engaging more with the workforce to add additional support for their families. However, women also felt pushed out of the workforce due to the excessive stress in those fields. However, ATARASHII GAKKO begins to shift the seemingly hopeless tone of the song at the end of the verse, introducing themselves into the equation as a force of change. Despite the trouble Japan currently faces, ATARASHII GAKKO insists that there is a distant hope that is soon approaching. We then go into the second chorus, which uses the same melody but slightly changes the lyrics. In this chorus, ATARASHII GAKKO also takes a subtle jab at Japanese authority. It's a common complaint that crises in Japan are never properly addressed, with companies and the government offering standard, meaningless apologies before resuming business as normal. This adds to the feeling of hopelessness and societal dissatisfaction, as issues simply repeat without any sign of acknowledgement or progress. The pressures of a society run by the needs of companies and corporations neglects the everyday people, limiting any outlet for expression and encouraging people to internalize their feelings of stress, dread, and hopelessness. The second verse expands on the vignette, exploring the different ways members of the family try to find fulfillment in a seemingly meaningless society. This verse stuck out to me in two different ways when I first started listening to this song. The first is the sentiment of life's short. With a feeling that life could end at any minute, possibly intensified by Japan's history of nuclear disasters and natural disasters, there's a desire for additional fulfillment outside of work in the home. However, and this is my second point, the first source of fulfillment is more work. In a society where expectations and rules were created by corporations and a work system is the main form of rewarding success, citizens find fulfillment in more work. It's a self-feeding cycle, which only intensifies feelings of dissatisfaction and stasis. However, this is a collective struggle, something that Japanese citizens can collectively rally around and try to progress from, as the last lyric of the verse suggests. This marks a turning point in the song both in tone and style, as the lyrics shift from ranting about the dreadful state of society today to hope for a new future, a future created by the citizens themselves by breaking out of the existing crises. This begins the call to action, telling Tokyo and the rest of Japan to start moving forward as individuals, which will then lead to collective progression as a nation. The end of the song is a triumphant chant, which is often shouted by audience members at their concerts.
We are marching! 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 We are marching!
This lyric takes the militaristic nature of marching as a form of mobilization and collective action, and directs it towards their hopes of progress and a brighter future for Japan. As new school leaders, they lead the call to march into a better tomorrow, taking pride in this collective action to move forward as a society. The music video for Tokyo Calling expands on the themes and methods of the song, using visual elements to call attention to their critiques of society while also paying further homage to iconic American and Japanese imagery. The first thing that stands out about the music video is its premise. As both a superhero force and giant kaiju, ATARASHII GAKKO interacts with the city of Tokyo, creating a force that encourages its dejected citizens to move forward. The premise of the video has three main inspiration points that build off one another: 70s to 90s tokusatsu media, the Sentai genre, and Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys. Tokusatsu refers to a specific, over-exaggerated, non-realistic style used by Japanese live-action films and TV programming. It specifically uses practical effects to create fantastical events and creatures in realistic Japanese settings. The style has origins in traditional Japanese entertainment like kabuki and bunraku, which also uses non-realism to comment on real events and ideas. If you're not familiar with the genre, then you're definitely familiar with the tropes within them. The tokusatsu style was used in the 1960s monster boom in kaiju films like Godzilla. It's also used in superhero and mecha media like Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and Giant Robo. It's a style that's deeply rooted in Japan's mass media history and ancient traditional entertainment forms. It can be seen in Tokyo Calling with the editing of ATARASHII GAKKO as giant monsters stalking through Tokyo, and the sci-fi looking control area for their superhero counterparts. Speaking of superheroes, the costumes that ATARASHII GAKKO wears as superheroes is a reference to the Sentai genre, which also uses the tokusatsu style quite often. Sentai refers to the idea of a military unit or task force in Japan. Sentai heroes were superheroes that served in a task force to defeat large evils like kaiju or giant mecha robots. This genre was mainly kickstarted by the Super Sentai series in 1975, which Americans will recognize in its reimagined form of the Power Rangers. By portraying themselves as Sentai heroes, ATARASHII GAKKO not only pays homage to the cultural staple that is Super Sentai, but uses its military imagery of a task force to emphasize their roles as leaders for their goal. Instead of combating a giant monster, them and their monster counterparts are combating Japanese society. Lastly, the structure and imagery in the video is almost definitely an homage to the music video for the Beastie Boys' 1998 single Intergalactic. ATARASHII GAKKO and Suzuko specifically have repeatedly expressed their love for the Beastie Boys in interviews, often listing them as a big inspiration for their music.
夢のフェスドリームフェスティバルビヨンセJay-Z やばいでしょやばい和田アキ子さんやばいでしょ
レジェンドいっぱい連れてきて
天童よしみさん
やばいね
見たい行きたいそれ行きたいビースティーボーイズ and Money Man yes
They also work with Money Mark, an American producer who worked with the Beastie Boys from 1997 to 2011. There's also the fact that they made a cover of Intergalactic in 2021, recreating the video while doing their own spin of the song's lyrics. I won't get too much into it in this video, but it's a great example of how ATARASHII GAKKO pays homage to both American and Japanese culture in their work, often using a combination of both to express their messages. The second thing that stands out about the music video are the visual vignettes that ATARASHII GAKKO uses for their verses. In these small, fast sections, Mizu, Rin, and Kanan dress up as members of the family, creating caricatures of the moments they describe to emphasize their toll on Japanese society. Rin plays the dad, stationary as the busy, stressful atmosphere of the workplace continues around him. Mizu plays the older, reclusive son, surrounded by trash and technology. Kanan acts as the mother, frozen as children and other moms cheerfully interact with one another. Their stasis points out the lack of satisfaction and fulfillment in these roles, critiquing them by simply showing their ridiculousness by forcing us to be an outside observer. The parody continues with the second verse, with the characters equally stuck in stasis at their attempts of fulfillment. The end of the music video is a perfect visual representation of their goal. Office workers, chefs, construction workers, all of these individuals rally around ATARASHII GAKKO as they chant the bridge. At the end, they stand together, a mobilized force ready to make a change. Overall, Tokyo Calling is a perfect example of what ATARASHII GAKKO is and how they do what they do. Through Japanese and American-inspired music, they create recognizable worlds that convey their desire for change, progress, and individuality. Okay, that was a lot. But it was really important to break that down as they cover similar themes and topics in the rest of their music. As a little break, enjoy a part from one of my favorite songs of theirs.
歯食いしばって時は来た荒野に立ち本当の自分へ叫ぶ
Oops. Did I say break? I actually meant an awful segue into the next section of my video. Change is just as politically charged as Tokyo Calling, if not slightly more forward with its messaging. Change is the latest release from ATARASHII GAKKO at the time of recording, being published on July 19, 2024. Change's instrumentation is mainly a combination of taiko drums, brassy trumpet lines, and marching snares. Taiko drums take up most of the percussive space in the song, while marching snares take over for the smaller melodic pre-choruses. The simpler instrumentation really makes the lyrics stand out, the trumpet often accenting the important melodic and rap shifts throughout the song. The song starts with the chorus, which changes throughout, but the main premise is calling for a change in both the state of the world and the individuals within it. Specifically, ATARASHII GAKKO calls for people to change themselves first, which would then allow people to change the world. The first part of every verse follows a similar format of questioning the listener and causing them to reflect before encouraging them to push forward. Atarashi Gakko asks the audience to be aware of their situation and the societal issues causing them. In the music video, that's overwork culture. But the lyrics could apply to a broad range of situations, making the message more universal.
ほんまに見えてんのか生きてんのかほんまにごっつ夢持ってんのか気合入れてどうなしたってやったらんとあかん千里の道を信じた道を極めんとあかん
Rin's rap section of the verse brings up two issues. The first issue Rin raps about is the role of the media in the lives of Japanese citizens. During moments of crises like the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and Fukushima nuclear disaster, both the government and the media failed to respond appropriately. While the government underplayed the severity of the damage caused to the surrounding area of the nuclear plant, the media sensationalized the catastrophe without offering any real answers on the situation. This has been a long-lasting trend in the Japanese media, which has led to citizens losing faith in both these coverage services and the government. In the context of the song, the unreliability of the Japanese media is something that Atarashi Gakko is asking its listeners to acknowledge and bring a change to through collective action. The second issue that Rin raps about is one of the concepts that we covered in Tokyo Calling, which is the idea of the endless everyday. An aspect of this phenomenon that I waited to touch on until this point in the video is the appeal of the endless everyday state. With contrasting feelings of impending doom and stasis, the lack of progression can feel almost comforting. There's an urge to enjoy the stasis while it lasts, since the other end of that stasis is apocalypse or otherwise impending doom. This has led to the complacency that Atarashi Gakko combats in this music video. Through change, Atarashi Gakko asks people to confront the situation head-on and actively push against it, rather than trying to enjoy the stillness while it lasts. The pre-chorus is a rising call to action, encouraging people to bear the discomfort that comes with acknowledging reality and come out into their true selves. The lyrics of the pre-chorus directly flow into the next section, telling people to shout at themselves to, well, change. The second verse is similar to the first, with Suzuka asking people to acknowledge their dissatisfaction before encouraging them to move forward.
なんでな元気なやんどうないしはったんなんでな我々待ってどうないしはったん通路は戦闘前進前例やったらんとあかん思い止める早は限界もうちょっとの我慢
Atarashi Gakko asks why the listener hesitates to move forward, ranging from personal doubt to the fear of social isolation. Regardless of the risks, Atarashi Gakko pushes them to move forward as their true selves and fight through that struggle, encouraging them that it'll be worth it in the end. The second part of this verse continues along this path, telling the audience that the time has come to create a change and fight. The final chorus takes the message of the song and really drives it through, encouraging people to change this version of themselves trapped in the boundaries of society and become their true selves, bringing Japan into a better future. The music video for Change emphasizes their message of rejecting the societal self in favor of the individual through similar methods of homage, parody, and reinvention. The premise for Change's music video is rather meta, with the entire thing taking place in a mostly bare film studio. Instead of an elaborate background, Atarashi Gakko uses a small amount of props and recognizable characters to convey the subjects they address in the song. Focusing on the set, Atarashi Gakko uses mirrors to expose the direction of the music video. At multiple points, you can see the members of Atarashi Gakko riding the dolly through these purposefully positioned mirrors, controlling the direction of the video and therefore their vision of an ideal future. Atarashi Gakko is in direct control of their destinies, but are also guiding others in the video with the motion of the camera. Atarashi Gakko also uses the space of the film set as a metaphor for life or society itself. Atarashi Gakko encourages multiple people to seize their destinies and find their best paths, which often results in the people physically leaving the set. A good example is the second verse, where the girl steps away from the mirror and exits out the studio door. In this metaphor, the girl has escaped the constructs of society and broken out into a different reality, one with her true self. Atarashi Gakko also addresses issues mentioned in Tokyo Calling like overwork culture. In the first verse, Atarashi Gakko dances and sings about a dejected businessman holding onto a subway handle. The group breaks him out of his stasis with their motivational lyrics, stirring him awake. The man can be seen marching with Atarashi Gakko out of the film studio at the end of the music video, embracing his true self and joining their call for a better future. Atarashi Gakko also addresses their line on the Japanese media in their music video, with Rin rapping behind a news desk and positioning herself to remain in front of the camera to the point of nearly climbing on the desk. They emphasize their lyrics about the endless everyday through the motion in the video. Besides Atarashi Gakko, all of the other music video members move lethargically until impacted by Atarashi Gakko in their messaging, breaking them from their stasis and helping them rush forward into a better future. As Atarashi Gakko said, this song is about striving for the best future, changing ourselves and everyone around us and even society as a whole. It's a song that flips negativity into positivity. So, now that you've gotten to know Atarashi Gakko and their music, I want to bring everything back to the beginning. Atarashi Gakko may not be the next punk revolutionary group or in-your-face political activists, but they definitely have a message. Whether it's exaggerated images of everyday life, references to the art forms and culture that influence their perspectives, or mobilizing their audience as youth representatives, they use their platform to create the change they want to see in the world. Atarashi Gakko is unapologetically themselves, and that's what they want for their audience. When everything is falling apart and life seems to be going nowhere, when work is too much or you feel alone, when you feel like you can't be your true self, change. Recognize what's going on around you and take the first step by improving yourself. With that, society can eventually take a collective step forward and create the future that you want to see.